Well, today on the Family Answer Man program, we're answering your questions about transgenderism and what happens in the aftermath to children following a divorce from a biblical worldview on the Family Answer Man program. This is David Orgis, and I am here with Dr. Mark Crosby, the Family Answer Man himself. This time is designed to answer questions commonly asked in both the counseling and church settings. And our goal is to answer general questions from a biblical worldview through the lens of our collective years of experience and education to help you, our listeners, have a stronger, healthier, and happier family. We want to say thank you to the incredible people at Days Smokehouse and Specialty Meats and the people at Winter's Air for underwriting today's show. Winter's Air is located at Denham Springs and services the Denham Springs and surrounding areas, and Days Smokehouse is located at 35770 LA Highway 16, just north of Denham Springs. Now, this show is not a therapy session, and it is not specific advice to your situation. Mental health is a very serious issue. Family dynamics can be, and often are, very complicated and dynamic. So, for in-depth answers to your questions, we encourage you to seek professional counsel specific to your unique circumstances. We hope that this episode of the Family Answer Man will encourage you and inspire you to make changes that will lead to a stronger, healthier, and happier family. Again, I am David Orgis, and I have a master's in professional counseling and 18 years in ministry. And I am joined here today by Dr. Mark Crosby, who has a PhD in family psychology and is a licensed professional counselor, a licensed professional counselor supervisor, and a licensed marriage and family therapist. So, Dr. Mark, we have some big questions today.
Hey, don't we?
Some controversial topics, maybe.
Yeah.
But we on the Family Answer Man can't and don't want to shy away from the difficult questions that we face as a society,
right,
that we face maybe personally, locally in sports and maybe in our own families.
Yes.
So with that being said, we know in Jesus' example that he addressed many of these controversial topics that were controversial to his day.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about your approach to addressing topics like this that are pretty big, pretty weighty, and maybe difficult to talk about.
Right. I mean, we all, no matter who you are, what your profession may be, whether you're a pastor, whether you're a therapist, whether you're a physician, attorney, and whatever your position may be in life, just as a mom or dad, the reality is that we are facing very difficult questions in our culture. And my approach is twofold. Number one, I think we should always approach everything and everyone as Jesus did. What I mean by that is this. John chapter 1 says that Jesus came into the world full of grace and truth. And you have to have both. Both balance each other, both counterbalance, if you will, each other. And because, again, truth is something that we need to know, need to hear, need to experience. Truth is what we need to live by. Grace is also something we need to know, we need to experience, and we need to live by. For the Christians who are listening, which is the majority of our audience, I would say, the Bible says we're saved by grace through faith. And we're saved by grace through faith because the truth is we are sinners in need of a Savior. So the reality is grace and truth is something we need to be mindful of. We need to receive it. We need to give it. And that's what Jesus did. He lived that life that was so balanced with grace and truth. No matter the situation, no matter the person, he brought grace and truth into that area. I think our problem in our culture is among our professionals and maybe even our pastors is that we're really good on grace, but not so good on truth. Or really strong on truth, but not so much on grace.
We're like one or the other.
Exactly. And that's just part of our human nature. We lean towards one or we lean towards the other. If we can ever get to that balance where grace and truth is balancing our lives, how we approach situations, how we approach relationships, how we approach, these difficult, questions, these difficult social areas of life, then I think we can have a better witness to who we are and what we're trying to convey and what we're trying to help others to understand. That's the first thing. Second thing is this. What I share with people all the time, whether it be in a counseling session or whether it be just in general, and that is ask yourself the question before you make a major decision or before you look into something, is what I'm about to do or is the answer I'm about to give, does it meet these three criteria? Is it right? Is it responsible? Is it realistic?
So that again is it right?
Think of the three R's. Is it right? Is it responsible? Is it realistic? Now, someone may say, well, how do I know if something's right or not? Ask yourself this. Is it legal? That's the first question. Is it moral? Is it ethical? And does the Bible endorse it? And if it meets that criteria, you can say, yes, what I'm about to say or do is right. Is it responsible? In other words, we have a certain responsibility to our family, to our work, to ourselves, to our church, to God. The list could go on. We have a certain responsibility that we need to fulfill. And then thirdly, is it realistic? In other words, if someone says to me, hey, I'm out of money right now, so I think I'm going to go and buy a lotto ticket because I think I will, strike it rich and pay all my bills, that's not realistic. As a matter of fact, I would counsel just the opposite. Now someone out there may say, well, I know, Bubba, he won, some money doing this or doing that. Well, that's one in, 100 million cases. The point simply is that it's not realistic. There's better ways to pay your bills. There's better ways to gain and earn money that are more real, that are more responsible, and that are right. So again, ask yourself the question, is it right? Is it responsible? Is it realistic? And if those three R's line up in your life, chances are you're going to make a good decision or give some good advice.
So with that being said, right, realistic, and responsible.
Correct.
Kind of having that baseline for our conversation today.
Right.
We're going to get into our first question that was submitted. And it's a big question, but this is a question, again, that was submitted to the show. And if you as our listeners want to submit a question, you can email those to familyanswerman@loumc.org. We would love to hear from you guys and to answer your questions. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read the question that came in today. First one says, what does the Bible say about being transgender, and is it a sin?
Yeah. So this is a question that, again, is finding its way throughout our culture. It's finding our way in sports. Many of you have been following what's going on in the NCAA swim meets as to what's going on there. It's finding our way in school board meetings as people are trying to figure out, what are the pronouns going to be for students, et cetera. It's finding our way in our churches. Pastors, believe it or not, if you're listening, it's finding our way into our churches. We need to be mindful of that. It's among our families. I meet, talk with, counsel with, pray with, cry with, laugh with, dozens of families every week. And this situation finds its way among our families. And the question is, what do we do? How do we approach this? How do we manage this? What about the holidays? It's finding its way into our field of psychology. Various, psychological researchers are coming up with some unique data. Some are embracing, some are pushing back. It's finding our way in our criminal justice system. In other words, there are some situations now where if a person is found guilty and they're sent to prison, if they identify as a woman, they can go to a woman's prison in some states. So the point is this: it is a very powerful question. It's a very loaded question, and I know those who are listening already have some ideas and some opinions on it. And so, but again, here on the Family Answer Man, we don't shy away from tough or uncomfortable questions.
That's right. And we have an opportunity, again, kind of our tagline, to answer these questions from a biblical worldview, not just from what we've heard, not just what we've decided.
Right. And so, and the reason why we answer these tough questions, and the reason why we answer these uncomfortable questions, and I'm going to tell you, there are people who would say, I wouldn't touch that question with a 10-foot pole. And I understand their sentiment, and I understand where they're coming from. But the reality is this. These questions require a thorough answer, and we'll try to give a thorough answer in the 15 minutes that we have, right? But the reality is, as you said earlier at the beginning of our program, Jesus encountered people who were not popular. He encountered situations that were not popular. I mean, he dealt with the woman at the well. She was not popular. No one wanted to do anything, have anything to do with her. Even the disciples are going, oh my goodness, what's he doing talking to this woman? Jesus dealt with Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a tax collector. Tax collectors they were a sinner unto themselves.
Amen.
Jesus dealt with the woman caught in adultery. He dealt with the lepers. The point is, Jesus did not shy away from uncomfortable situations or people that were not, shall we say, embraced by the culture. And here's the thing, as we said at the very beginning of our program, he always brought truth and grace. He always brought truth and grace. So, again, as I said before, my template is ask the question, is it right? Is it responsible? Is it realistic? The next thing is this. We have to be, as we all learned in graduate school, critical thinkers. Critical thinking is important. In other words, telling people what they want to hear is not always the answer. Telling people what they want to hear is not always the answer. And so, again, I love this story. I'm old enough, maybe some of our listeners are, to remember the story of the emperor who had no clothes. Okay, and for those of you who are not familiar with this, here's the short version. This emperor walked around without any clothing on. Everybody said to him, "Oh, emperor, your clothes are beautiful. Oh, emperor, your clothes are beautiful. Doesn't he look wonderful?" And he would walk away and walk down streets, without any clothing on. And everybody would just, jump up and down and scream and shout as to how beautiful his clothes were, until finally a little boy said, "Hey, the emperor ain't got no clothes on." Well, that little boy was giving a real view of what was happening. He was looking at the reality of the fact that everybody else was trying to say the emperor had clothes on, but this little boy says, no, the reality is he doesn't have any clothes. So we have to take a realistic approach to this very, very difficult situation and very, very sensitive topic. Now, again, let me just say this. It's okay to have differing views about things. And if we have differing views, okay, but it doesn't mean we have to hate each other.
That's right.
I mean, we live in this culture now where it seems like if one view is different than the other, that means automatically, because my view or your view is different, that we have to hate each other, or that you hate because your view is different than my view. And my thought is, where does that come from? I mean, we're called to be critical thinkers. We're called to have various opinions. We're called to have, various ways of seeing things, if you will. And just because it's different doesn't mean there's hate involved. So we need to make sure that's careful. So again, this is the approach we're taking. So the next thing, as you said at the very beginning, let's approach this from a Christian worldview. The Christian worldview is this, is that sexual morality is not just some social construction that we can deconstruct. That's very important to note. Sexual morality is not just some social construction that we can deconstruct. Sexual morality is a biblical reality and a boundary to protect humanity. What do I mean by that? I mean this. Human sexuality is the only thing on this planet, hear this, that can create life and destroy life. You think about that. It's the only thing that can create life and at the same time destroy life. And if we do not handle it correctly, if it's not kept, if you will, in a certain boundary to protect humanity, then it will destroy life. And so that's important to understand. Another medical reality is this. A medical reality is men and women are different down to the cellular and molecular level.
Right.
There are 6,500 genetic differences between men and women. These 6,500 genetic differences affect our organs, our brains, our heart, our lung, our joints, and the reality, and the list could go on. And it doesn't matter, therefore, your gender philosophy when you're on an operating table and a surgeon's trying to save your life. That surgeon is going to look at you as either male or female. That's a medical reality. So here's the question. So what is transgender? Is it a sin? This is the question we have. First of all, let's look at, again, what the psychiatric diagnosis has been in the diagnostic manual. According to the diagnostic manual of psychiatric diagnosis, gender dysphoria is a marked incongruence between one's expressed gender and their primary or secondary characteristics. It's a strong desire to be rid of one's primary or secondary characteristic. It's a strong desire for the primary and or secondary sex characteristics of the other gender. It's a strong desire to be of the other gender. It's a strong desire to be treated as the other gender. It's a strong conviction or desire that one has typical feelings and reaches and reactions, if you will, of the other gender.
Right, and so those are medical definitions from the Diagnostic Statistics Manual.
That's straight from the Diagnostic Manual.
Right.
Note the verbiage. These are strong desires.
So not, hey, she likes to play in the dirt and wear overalls. She's a tomboy. She's good at softball. He's real sensitive. He's pretty, emotional and compassionate.
Exactly. What you're looking at, again, those are characteristics. But these are, according to the medical diagnosis, if you will, these are desires. Here's my point. Desires change over time. Desires change over time. Here's what I can say personally. I used to desire to play football. I don't desire to play football any longer. Do I like to watch it from time to time? Sure. But that desire has changed. This is why the research indicates that 75% to 90% of children and teenagers who have these desires as children and teenagers will lose these desires by the time they reach adulthood. Point being, desires change. The problem is this. When we as a culture forget that these are desires and seek to change the body with puberty blockers and other chemicals that will permanently alter children and adolescents. And in some cases, when mixed with other chemicals and hormones, will make them sterile. By the way, there's several side effects, such as brittle bones, obesity, cognitive problems, just to name a few. So my question is this: when do we call into reality what's going on here? In other words, people desire and they identify a plethora of things. Some desire to be a woman if you're a man, some desire to be a man if you're a woman. But here's what I also have seen in my field, in my practice. I've met people who identify as being a bird. I've met people who thought they were a bird and literally jumped off a fifth floor, building, tried to flap their arms thinking they were a bird and hit the ground below. That's dangerous. I have met people who have identified as being blind and wanted to take chemicals and burn their eyes out because they identify as being blind. Here's my question in those two cases. Do we intervene as professionals? Do we intervene as pastors? Do we intervene as therapists? Or do we say, well, if you think you're a bird, I'm going to celebrate, your foul behavior and let you, jump off fifth, story, buildings so that you can flap your arms because obviously you think you're a bird. No, we don't do that. I have met people, and this is going to be very serious for some listeners, that identify as being dead. And so they will say things and do things. And so do we as professionals intervene? Of course we do. Here's the point. The moment we leave reality is the moment we put people's lives at risk. And for some reason, our culture has not gotten that message. Medically speaking, you're either male or female. And that's true of every area of life. Again, if you're on the operating table and that surgeon is trying to save your life, they will treat you, medically and otherwise, as either a male or female. So here's my argument. Instead of trying to change their body, which is what many are trying to do now, let's give chemicals, let's give, hormones, let's do this, very serious surgery. My question is this: instead of changing the body, why don't we change the way of thinking? I mean, that's what we do, as therapists. And why don't we change the way of thinking? If we're going to spend all this time trying to change the body, why do we try to change the mind? So again, because here's my question. Who hasn't wished they weren't taller or shorter or faster or stronger or had blonde hair or had brown hair or had hair at all?
Had hair.
Okay? I mean, who hasn't wanted that? So again, here's to answer the question. So that was kind of the introduction. Answer the question. What does the Bible say? The Bible says this in Colossians 1:15, that we have been fearfully and wonderfully created by Him and for Him. In other words, we are God's design. We have been created by God and for God. That's important to understand. Psalm 119 verse 14 says that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. In other words, you are the workmanship, you are the masterpiece of God Almighty. We have forgotten that message, I think, in our churches, from our pulpits, maybe in some of our counseling centers, etc. Matthew 19:4, Jesus said, you're either male or you're female. So here's the point. We have a designer. Everything has been created as a designer. There's not an atheist out there that can prove to me that anything that has design and purpose doesn't have a creator. You cannot name one thing that has a design and purpose that doesn't have a creator. Here's the point. Designers give instructions on how the product is to work. That's true of our cars. That's true of our cell phones. And so the problem is this. We have a problem when we take a cell phone and we don't follow the instructions. Drop your cell phone in the pool, I guarantee you're going to have a problem. It's not designed for that. Your car has certain limitations. Again, drive your car into a lake thinking it's a submarine, you're going to have a problem.
Right.
And so it is with your body. It's designed by God. It's designed for God. And if you try to alter that, here's the point. If you try to alter that, then you will struggle. Just like if you try to drive your car into a lake thinking it's a submarine, it's going to struggle. So here's the point. We don't call light darkness. We don't call evil good. We don't call sweet bitter. Words are powerful, and they're meant to have meaning. Magical thinking, make-believe, defiance of design doesn't change reality. That little boy who saw the emperor with no clothes said, he ain't got no clothes on. Everybody was saying to the emperor how beautiful his clothes were, how elegant, how regal. And finally, a little boy looked at this and said, "This is not reality." And he called out and said, "The emperor has no clothes." And there was a hush among the crowd. There was a gasp among the crowd, like, "Oh my goodness, somebody actually called out and said the emperor has no clothes on. What shall we do?"
Right.
Well, again, so here's the question. So is it a sin? Here's what I know. Anytime you tamper with the instruction manual, anytime you tamper with the instructions of the manufacturer, the product will fall short. Again, if you try to drive your, brand new Cadillac into the lake thinking it's a submarine, that's a sin, okay? Because you have just ruined a beautiful, wonderful, powerful, expensive car that was made to run well on the highway, never designed to be a submarine in the lake. That's a sin, I will argue, because by definition, sin means this: you're simply falling short or you're missing the mark. So if you tamper or negate God's design, then I will argue this: it falls short, thus meeting the definition of sin. So coming full circle, it's important that we approach everything and everyone with grace and truth. Truth is, you're male or female. That's medical truth. That's biblical truth. When a person has a desire to alter that, we're called to show and share both truth and to give grace, to bring hope, to bring healing, and to bring reality into their life, because that's what Jesus did.
That is powerful. To bring grace and truth into people's lives, to bring healing, like you said, because that's what Jesus did.
And look, we have friends, we have family, we have coworkers, we have people that, again, are struggling with this directly or indirectly.
Right.
They have a family member, they have a son or daughter, they have a sister or brother, they have a mom or dad. And so this is finding its way throughout our culture. Grace and truth is powerful. It's the way we approach. Is it right? Is it responsible? Is it realistic? That's the way we approach it. And if we can do those things, I would argue that we can bring some reality into the situation as well as some hope and healing.
Right. And like you said, to bring healing, not to pit people against each other and have conflict for no reason, but to operate in truth.
Or condemn.
And right.
Or condemn.
Right.
And I think that's been one of the issues that many have struggled with, on both sides of this argument. But grace and truth is what I see Jesus doing to the woman at the well, to the woman caught in adultery, to Zacchaeus, to the lepers, and the list could go on.
That's good. That is good. The Family Answer Man, ladies and gentlemen, not straying away from any of the hard or controversial topics. Again, Family Answer Man bringing answers from a biblical worldview, because we care and we do want you to have a stronger, healthier, and happier family. So today on Family Answer Man, we have another question that we're going to have to cover quick, but also very important question. The question written into the Family Answer Man says that my child is really struggling with their behavior and showing signs of significant anxiety that has shown up since my divorce. How do I help my children manage shared custody and living in multiple homes?
Wow, this is common, because what is happening is that children desire, with the foundation of love, with the foundation being love, they need four major things. And we talked about, a moment ago, the three R's: what's right, responsible, and real. Well, these are the four S's, okay? Children need stability. They need stability. Stability is defined as, I know when I get up in the morning, I know when I go to bed at night, I know my schedule, I know what to expect when I come home, I know, what to expect in most cases for dinner, I know what programs I can watch on TV, etc. They need stability, which also leads into the next thing, which is very similar. They need structure. Structure, again, is something that says, I know each night what my bed feels like. I know, what my clothes are, where my clothes are in the closet, etc. I know where my toys are. I know what I can play with. I know where I can't play. They need security. They need to know that, again, there are people in their lives that will protect them, watch over them, and thus also they need, therefore, safety. So this becomes a concern for the child when divorce occurs, because now the stability is shaken. The structure is shaken. In some cases, the security is shaken. And that's especially true if mom has a new boyfriend or dad has a new girlfriend, and maybe the new boyfriend or new girlfriend doesn't like the child or sees the child as a threat. And so therefore, the stability, the structure, the security, the safety is now a concern for the child. And when that happens, children become very anxious and in some cases depressed. In both cases, anxiety and depression, children will act out. That is how they express their anxiety and their depression. Thus, as parents, we are called to maintain, first of all, civility between you and your former spouse. The more animosity, the more acrimony there is between the parents, again, the greater the anxiety, the greater the depression, the less security, safety, structure, and stability the child feels. This is why, again, I preach, to parents all the time in my practice. Here are the 3 C's. Cooperation, consideration, communication is crucial. Be cooperative with the other parent. Well, it's my weekend. No, be cooperative with the other parent. Be considerate. If there's a death in the family on your side, if there's a holiday that's special, if there's an activity that's really important, be considerate. Be willing to communicate. Again, the next important thing is you're divorcing, unfortunately, your spouse, but you don't divorce your children. And sometimes we will do that, not meaning to, not realizing that's what we're doing, but we begin to disconnect from our kids. We begin to disconnect from some of their activity or some of their interests. Try to maintain similar rules and a similar schedule and similar boundaries. In other words, if bedtime is at 8:30 at mom's house, it needs to be at 8:30 at dad's house. If the children aren't allowed to have dessert until after their meal at mom's house, the same true as dad's house. If the children cannot watch, PG-13 movies at mom's house, then don't let them watch PG-13s at dad's house. Similar rules, a similar schedule. This is very important. Stop seeing the other spouse as the enemy. So many times, the reality is that mom will see dad as the enemy or dad will see mom as the enemy. And if that happens, that puts the child in a very precarious place. In other words, the child doesn't want to see mom as the enemy, but dad does. Or the child doesn't see dad as the enemy, but mom does. And now the question to the child is, what about my loyalty? Where does my loyalty lie?
Right, which is really confusing because you got a kid that says, I love my mom, I love my dad, and you have someone that's telling them somebody that you love is a bad guy.
Exactly. And so what that does is that creates this anxiety because where does my loyalty lie? And will I upset mom if I love dad? Will I upset dad if I love mom? And so if there is high conflict, and I know some listeners may be hearing this, if there is high conflict, have a parenting coordinator. Sometimes your attorney or your judge will help you with that. This is not a popularity contest. Don't turn your child into a spy and try to swallow your ego, your pride, and recognize the stress of your child. They didn't ask for this. Try to focus on them. Family therapy is always an option. It's often crucial. But kids do want to see that their significant people can talk together, can communicate together, and will eventually put them, in a very important place in their lives so their needs can be met.
There you go. Family Answer Man. Make sure you keep your kids' emotional priority in your life, even if you are going through a difficult time. We are thankful that you guys joined us today on the Family Answer Man program. We want to thank the incredible people at Winter's Air and Days Smokehouse and Specialty Meats again for underwriting today's show. And as a reminder, this is not a therapy session, nor is this specific advice to you and your situations. So, please, if you have more questions, email those to us at familyanswerman@loumc.org, or if you need to seek professional help, we encourage you to find a good Christian counselor or your pastor to talk to about the issues in your life. Again, we would love to hear from you, familyanswerman@loumc.org. Thank you so much for joining us. Our hope, as always, is that you would be inspired to make changes that will lead to a stronger, healthier, and happier family.